Hello and welcome everyone. Welcome to DevChatter. My name is Brendan. I think most of you probably know that if you're here this early in the stream. Hopefully you're all having a fantastic Saturday. It is Saturday, June 2nd now, and it's pretty nice out today. It's early afternoon here, and I think by this point you've probably figured out something interesting if you didn't notice it on the title. There is a person, like a real human person way up there in the corner, up in the stream. So yeah, right up there. He's got two fingers that he can point at the camera too. That is Dave Glick, and he is here to talk with us about some cool technology that we want to use for our site. So why don't you give us a little short intro, tell us something about you, Dave?
Hey everyone. So I am the developer of YAM, along with several other open source projects. And it is a static generator, which we're going to be looking at today. Trying to build a site for DevChatter here, which should be fun. Besides that, I am a Twitter addict, on GitHub quite a bit, and just launched a website called discover.net, which is kind of cool if you want to find new projects and stuff in the .NET space.
Cool. Thank you for the description. Is it just discoverdot.net?
It is yeah, exactly. Discoverdot.
Like this one?
.net. Yes, that one.
Yes, I will toss a link to that in our chat.
Yep, and this is actually kind of timely here because this site is built by YAM. So it's an example of what can be done with YAM as a generator if you kind of go all out and add a bunch of customizations and API calls and that kind of thing during the generation process.
Why am I not surprised?
One of the reasons I built it. Yeah, one of the reasons I built it was kind of to showcase what can be done. Both as a let's help out the .NET open source community, but also then as a sort of a use case or a example of how far you can go with not just YAM, but static generation in general. I'm a big fan of the static generation concept. And I think there's still a lot of distance and mileage people could get out of that other than just using it for things like blogs.
Yeah. So that is no problem. Helsing interviews. We're actually going to be at a fairly. This is at least I don't think Dave knows better than I do, but I don't expect this to be like a super in-depth coding one. So we're not going to be like I have a feeling this is going to be a much easier, more approachable thing than like diving right into the depths of an existing C# application, for example.
Yes, yeah, there won't be too much coding. And what coding there will be old school without IntelliSense. So we'll make lots of funny mistakes, I'm sure.
Yes. So real stuff. It'll be good.
Yes.
Oh, what is this? What is this? Is that you coming in?
Am I in? I
think so.
Hey,
you're in. Cool. And welcome, anybody who is lurking over in C# Fritz's chat. Just want to say hi to all of you. We're going to be doing some static generation today using YAM. So YAM.io, it's a toolkit for generating static websites. So right here, YAM.io. And I've got a guest with us, Dave Glick, who probably maybe figured out from the context of what I just said that we just got hosted by C# Fritz, so anybody that was lurking in there is now in here. And I try not to talk too loud when his people show up, because Fritz is a little quieter than I am, and so they might have had their volume cranked up to hear him. But hopefully they've now had time to adjust their volume so we don't deafen them when we talk. Okay, so essentially, the plan for today is figuring out how to build a devchatter.com website using YAM so that we can set this up. So static generation, we sort of talked about it, and I know a little bit about it. You're the expert, so tell me if I say anything wrong here.
Okay.
So let's make sure that I have a good understanding of it. So essentially, this is a program that is going to take some kind of template and say content like Markdown, something like that that I have set up, and is going to create an HTML website from this, and all the content that I need that's actually going to be what is, in the web server. So say I put this on IIS. IIS is just going to see this as a bunch of HTML pages and images and things like that, static content. And so it's not going to be running the ASP.NET process or anything like that. So it can be nice and fast and fully cacheable and everything like that.
Yeah, that's right. And the advantage of that is it makes your sites more secure because there's a minimal web backend. And sometimes you can even get away with not having a backend at all. You can end up serving on something straight on a CDN, for example. So you've got some security benefits, you've got performance benefits because there's no logic that has to be executed on the server, and you've got some benefits in terms of deployment and management because a lot of these static site hosts are designed to be very, very simple. You just upload the files and you're done. They take care of all of the hosting nitty-gritty for you.
And I assume hosting, if I'm not mistaken, I'm assuming hosting on this is basically zero.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of really great hosts out there that are specializing now in static sites because it's such a low overhead thing for them to do. Like the two that come to mind are GitHub Pages and Netlify is the other one that I absolutely adore. And both of those services essentially push your site into their CDN. So they're barely running, a web server on the back end. They're basically just getting you out to the edge so that then when people visit, they're pulling down straight up the same files you uploaded, which makes for a very nice deployment story.
Makes sense. Yeah, no, it sounds good. Okay, so it says you are in here. I'm assuming you can see all my stuff.
Yep.
All my stuff, all 2 files. Cool. So let's we can probably get started then. Where should we start? What's the first step?
So first step is getting YM installed into a point where we can run it. So
I did that already, and I will tell everybody
good.
what I did to do that so that we didn't, have it not work. So we didn't want to do this piece on stream and be like, oh, I need to mess with my permissions or something like that. So all I did was I went out and I just typed choco install ym inside of my command line. And this used Chocolatey, which is actually a package manager I already have on my computer. If you don't have Chocolatey, it's pretty easy to use. You just install this, and it's basically a package manager for your software. And I use this to get ym installed in my path. And so, just to prove to you that it's there, I'm just going to run ym. What's a good trigger for showing me the info or something?
Yeah, so if you just run it without any arguments, it'll show a help. You can do -- help.
All right, there we go. Okay, so it's definitely installed.
Yep. Yeah, so we've got a couple commands here. Build is the one we're probably going to be using the most. New is sort of like running .NET New. It's a templating system that lets you scaffold sites that follow particular patterns like a blog.
So I want to do one thing. If we're gonna spend a decent amount of time in the command line, aren't we?
Yes.
Let me go ahead and share my screen with you in addition to this so you're not delayed. So I will separately share my screen with you.
Yeah, that'll be good.
Yeah, so... Okay, everybody still sees everything? Yep, okay, good.
Yep.
So now you can see my screen, and I apologize everybody for the red border that you now get. Okay, so now there's no delay on that, so... Because I noticed there was like a couple of second delay before you'd see it, so...
Yeah.
Alright, so... how do we get started then? You said new is basically like a .NET new, so that's probably what we want.
Yeah, so it's got some templates. But I guess the So the first question here is, does the site we're going to build fit one of the templates, or in YM I call them recipes?
That's a good question.
So a recipe is basically there it is. It's a pre-canned configuration that includes different options that are appropriate for a particular type of site. And the two main recipes in here are blog and docs. The book site one is more of a kind of proof of concept. It works fine, but it's kind of a niche case.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would do docs. A lot of people would do a blog.
Yeah, docs basically works kind of like the old Sandcastle help file builder. It scans either an assembly or a set of source files and runs them through code analysis to come up with API documentation and lets you write markdown documentation along with that. Blog is sort of your traditional, what people might be used to if they've used other static site generators like Jekyll. The blog recipe is kind of similar to that concept, where you stick markdown files either at the root and they end up as pages in the site, or you stick them in a particular subfolder and they end up as blog entries. So blog is appropriate for a lot of different kinds of sites. It might be a good one to use here.
I think ours would make a lot of sense with a blog piece, because we could then use essentially the blog be like a news feed kind of thing on a site. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's the built-in recipes have some themes already associated with them. Mm-hmm. So if a recipe is the config that essentially has the code that says, here's how I want you to read the stuff on disk and output files. A theme is the HTML and CSS and all of the stuff that goes along with that site to make it pretty. Otherwise, it's you're just dumping out a bunch of text files. So that's probably a good starting place for us.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, so we'll do the blog recipe. So I assume, here it is. ym new -r blog.
Yeah, so -r means recipe.
Okay.
We have to tell it that's the recipe we want to use.
So I can probably copy this. I notice this one specifies a theme. Do I want to specify a theme while I'm creating it, or do I want to do that after the fact then?
No, you can do that after the fact. If you don't specify one, it'll go ahead and use the default one. It'll throw that in there for you.
All right, so I will do new -r and then blog and run that, and we'll take a look at what we get. So this is all, I already have a Git repository for this, so if I mess anything up, I can easily undo it. Hopefully I don't mess anything up. All right, so it looks like it made 4 files.
Yep.
Cool.
So we've got some sort of example markdown files in here to start with. A sample post and a sample sort of non-post page. And then we've also got a config.ym file, and that's sort of where the magic happens. You'll notice at the start of that, it says we're going to be using the blog recipe. We're configuring a couple settings here. You'll probably want to go ahead and change those to whatever's appropriate.
I know these. I know the values that go here. And probably description of welcome is probably good for now.
Yeah, that'll work for now.
Okay.
Okay, so let's go ahead and open up the terminal, and let's just see what we get right out of the box here.
All right, so for this one,
so we'll use the preview command. So just write ym preview.
Like this, or dash preview?
No, it's just ym preview.
Okay.
Okay, and we get a, let's see here. So right out of the gate, we've got an exception. What does that say? Directory, are we in the right directory here? We are. Okay, it looks like it's having trouble creating a directory. Maybe there's a permissions issue. Is this a admin command prompt?
Nope, but it will be now.
We're in PowerShell.
Oh, do you want me to be in command line? I can be in command
I
line.
don't know. I'm wondering if that maybe is causing problems with like creating directories, because part of what YM does is it creates and clears directories while it runs.
Yeah, I'll let me do this. We'll try this. YM preview. Oh nope, still killed me there. In that case, let me do this. I'm going to open up a PowerShell window as admin.
You know what? Okay, let's do this. Do YM preview is looking for an existing YM site. That error message could have been cleared.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so since we haven't ever built it before, we're going to need to build it in the first case. And there's actually a preview mode during the build process too. So if you, just type YM, that'll build it, or you can do YM -- preview, and that'll build it and launch the preview server kind of in one command.
Got it. So now I can preview and it will work. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, so now you can do a YM preview, and that'll preview what you already built.
So it sounds like it's listening on port 5080. Let's see. So localhost 5080. There it is. So we have our site running, and what's the is this like a Kestrel server or something? What do you?
So this is an integrated. That is correct. It's an integrated Kestrel server.
Okay.
And it runs. Well, so right now we're doing the preview mode, which essentially is just a Kestrel server looking at the output. You'll notice you have a new output directory in your file tree there. That's where YM puts the stuff. If you want to upload this to a web server right now, you just upload everything that's in that output directory.
Okay.
So the YM preview command is basically just integrated Kestrel serving up whatever's in that folder. Now, it gets fun when we do preview as part of the build. When we do YM, instead of YM preview, we do YM -- preview. And the distinction there is without the -- we're running the preview mode or the preview command. When you do the -- we're actually running the build command, but then saying preview the site after we build. So this will build it and then preview it. And then if we also add -- watch to that command, it'll, then we get into a tight loop where we'll build, preview.
If we change files, it builds again?
Exactly. As you change files, it'll rebuild the site in the background. And it has live reload. So as you change files and it rebuilds, it'll automatically refresh your pages for you.
So you're saying that I could do this. I could put one up there, one over here, and just be editing these files. Like I could go into first.
Yeah, exactly. Go ahead and edit that, type in something new, save it, and then a second or so later, you'll notice without having to hit refresh or anything, your web browser will change. So it's using some sort of WebSockety stuff between YM and the client to essentially tell the client, hey, something changed, reload.
Is it going to get it on this page? Come on.
It should. If YM is finished, it should.
Hang on.
Here we go.
No, I'm going to go to this page, and then I'm going to do this. Save. There we go. Okay, now it's working. So the home page wasn't reloading on me, I don't think, when I changed the first post. So I'm betting if
maybe some caching. Some of the stuff, particularly when you have aggregate information like a list of posts and their descriptions, it tries to be so that the rebuilds are quick, especially when you have lots of content. It'll try to cache what it can, and so some of the aggregate stuff doesn't necessarily change with live reload. The live reload is really good when you're like working on a particular page and you want to see how what you're doing affects the page.
Yep, that totally makes sense. Yeah. Okay. Nice. I like it. I assume there's a way to do a cleanup to get rid of the built code?
So it'll automatically clean that up on every build for you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, each build, part of the process is to clean up the output folder and replace what's in there.
Nice.
So yeah, it's telling you a lot of things here. Basically, the way YM works. Before we get into sort of customizing and adding stuff,
Mm-hmm.
it's probably worth talking about just very briefly some of the concepts under the hood. And what it really is. The way to think about it is, unlike other generators like Jekyll or Hugo, if anyone's ever played with those, YM can be thought of more like a build system for files, right? Everyone's sort of familiar with build systems for your code, right? We have MS Build, there's Make, there's Psake, there's Cake, which is my favorite. But all these build systems basically do the same kind of thing. They take some input, your code, and then they do a bunch of stuff to that, right? In MS Build, when you build a project, MS Build is not just taking your code files and sending them to CSC, the .NET compiler, but before and after it does that, it's doing some other stuff, right? It's downloading NuGet packages, it's resolving references, it's figuring out which files need to be sent to CSC. So a build system is essentially a set of tasks that are structured in order, and each task does some stuff. YM is a very similar sort of underlying concept. There are tasks in YM, they're called pipelines, and each pipeline consists of multiple steps or multiple things that happen. And those are encapsulated by what we call modules. And so each module does a particular thing. And the modules are designed to do things that are helpful for building static sites. So there's modules for like interpreting Razor files. There's modules for reading Markdown. There's modules for just reading files, because that's the first stage. And the way that these modules work and the way that YM works is that each module takes a set of what we'll call documents as input, and then outputs a set of documents, which could be those inputs transformed in some way, or it could be some new set of documents. So a good example is the first module that most sites would ever use is read files. And read files, all it does is it reads a file off the disk, and it outputs documents, YM documents, for each file that it finds in the pattern that you give it. And so you would use a read files module and then follow that with some other module. So a very simple YM site would be basically a read files module followed by maybe a markdown module. So you'd read in all of your .md files, and then you'd process them as markdown, and then you'd close it out with a write files module, which would then write those documents back out to disk. So it's a very sort of pipeline type system, which is why they're called pipelines. Each module basically acts on these documents in sequence until what you end up with is the stuff that you want to write to disk.
That makes sense. So when I saw over here, you mentioned add any pipeline customizations inside of the config.
Yeah, so one of the things we got by using a recipe is think of a recipe as an invisible set of YM pipelines inside of your config file here that you just can't see. It's in there, it's getting run. Anything you add to this file is going to happen after that. But the recipe essentially just sets up pipelines and modules for you to do a particular set of tasks.
So it does the things like reading the markdown files in the input and post folders, and I'm assuming that it probably runs a separate one for each one of those because our recipe was blog.
Exactly, and if you go back to the command prompt where we ran YM, you can actually see in there each of the pipelines that are doing different things. And so that kind of gives you an idea of what's going on behind the scenes.
So the pages pipeline, for example, probably did like a read files, and that's what got the about, and it had a write files to essentially, and something in between there that did the conversion of Markdown to HTML, and then the blog posts one went in the posts folder.
Right, exactly. Yep.
Okay. Yep. And then I assume that these other ones like tags, index, other things like that probably did something along the lines of reading the metadata off of the top of these files that I noticed we had up here. Whoops.
That's exactly right. Yeah. So
Okay.
let's open up the first post. So we have, this is called front matter in the sort of static generator world.
Okay.
What it is it's essentially a YAML file, YAML, if you're not familiar with that. It's a sort of simplified format for specifying keys and values. Think of it like JSON, but without all the curly braces. So we've basically stuffed a YAML file on top of our blog post and then delimited it with this 3 dash.
Yep, makes sense.
Thing here. So part of what some of these other pipelines do is it looks in the, recall you mentioned there was a blog post pipeline, and you're absolutely right. The blog post pipeline job is to read the blog post files, run them through a markdown parser so we end up with HTML, and then write them to disk. But as part of that process, we also read the front matter in those files, and that front matter ends up as metadata in those, remember I talked about earlier, YAM documents. So a YAM document is a set of content plus metadata. And so these other pipelines are basically reaching into either the pages pipeline and or the blog post pipeline, which were responsible for reading these files and pulling in the metadata, and then doing other things with that metadata. So like the tag index pipeline is going to get the documents from the blog post pipeline and read all of the tags from that metadata for each of those resulting documents, and then create other pages for the metadata that it found, like the index of all the tags on the site.
Yep, that makes sense.
Yeah, so that's basically how you build up a complicated YAM site. Is you create pipelines that do certain things, and then you create more pipelines that act on that data. And a kind of a good rule of thumb is pipelines roughly correspond to output files. When you get really complicated, you can have pipelines that don't actually result in outputting anything, that their whole job is to basically process data and make it available to other pipelines. And there's a little bit of that here in the blog recipe. But for the most part, there's a sort of one-to-many correspondence between the output files and the pipeline that created that output file. So that's basically how the recipe works here. And using the recipe, you can get pretty far without having to do much of anything other than type markdown. You can see how if you add more posts and more pages, you can build up a pretty good site just doing that. So let's take a look at some of the themes. If you let's open a web browser and go back to the YAM
good
page, and then head on over to the recipes tab.
Recipes?
Yep, and then we'll open up the themes.
Yep. For blog, yeah, okay. And we're on clean blog. I saw that in the bottom of our config.
Yeah, that's the default for the blog recipe, mainly just because it was the first. Yep. But there's some other ones in here that can be used. We have Phantom, which is kind of a minimalistic theme. There's Solid State and Stellar, which are kind of more stylistic. Trophy is sort of a blunter sort of block type of thing. So we can pick one of these built-in themes, and then once we change the theme, well, let's make some customizations to that, because that's kind of one of the first requests a lot of people have once they get up and running is, how do I customize the theme? How do I add my own styles? How do I change the footer, change the title, things like that?
Yep, exactly. That makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
So what do you think? I could see either doing Phantom or Solid State, probably.
Yeah, so solid state's kind of nice. Let's do that one. We
right.
can change it later.
So I'm going to click on this.
Okay, while you're doing that, we've got a question about custom recipes. So I want to address this verbally because it's kind of a misconception that a lot of people have when they're first starting with YAM. The term recipe I kind of use to describe a prepackaged config file that is meant for distribution. So a recipe might be, and they don't have to be like official recipes. They don't have to be ones that I have built or the YAM community has built and distributed. But the idea is that it's something that you've written in code, you packaged it into an assembly and a NuGet package, and then you've put it up as a package for download for other people. When most people ask about how to create recipes, what they really are asking is, how can I create my own pipelines? How can I write my own config file? And to do that, you basically just put the pipelines in the config.ym file. And so, yeah, we'll get to that. We'll touch on how to do a custom config or how to add stuff to your config. Okay, oh dear, what do we have here?
I'm not sure. Let me fully extend this so we can see the whole error. Looks like it failed to find post layout. Here's what I ran. I did this, which I probably needed to pull it, didn't I?
Okay, well, so yeah, so what we should do.
Yeah, I need to go get it first or something. There's
well, no, that should download it for you.
Oh, okay. Well, cool then.
But the easier way to do it is to put it in your config file. If you do #t solid state in your config file, that'll kind of lock it in.
Yeah, because I had it down here. I saw it in this one down here, right? Wait.
Yeah, so if you...
Oh, but I just nuked it because we just changed it, didn't we?
Okay, yeah, so let's go ahead and nuke this packages.xml file. It'll rebuild that. That's basically a performance tweak. And then in the config file, we just want to do theme solid state.
The neat thing for anybody that hasn't noticed, we're using VS Live Share, so Dave actually is the one that deleted that file, not me. And then he's also the one that just typed this. So the weird part is we are screen sharing, but that's not how he's controlling my Visual Studio. He's actually in here as a guest. You'll notice that we have separate cursors, so here, just type some gibberish where you are. So I'm down here, and notice his other cursor up there, and he can type up there. And we both have inputs into this at the same time. So it's kind of neat. Good for collaboration like this, especially when, someone else knows what they're doing, and
yeah, very cool.
One guy doesn't. I'm the one that doesn't. I have... It's funny, you tweeted the thing of like, I have no idea what I'm doing. Well, guess what? I have no idea what I'm doing. Alright, so theme, solid state. Sounds good. So now you're saying when I run this, and I do a -- preview, in theory, it might go grab that package and load this site for me.
Yes, that's what it should do. You see it's got a stage there, it says installing packages. YAM has a totally integrated NuGet client, which goes out and gets packages. Okay, so we're still getting an error. Let's see if that's a theme problem or a YAM problem. So let's try changing that theme to Phantom. That was the other one you said you might want to try.
Yeah, so we'll open back this, and it was called Phantom?
Yeah.
You're thinking maybe the theme, like the latest version of the theme, is not lined up with the default from the template?
That's right. Yeah, we just had a new release.
Yep. Okay.
That worked. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, and the themes get tested against all the recipes. In fact, that's how the YAM site ended up with the theme previews. It basically builds the theme against the recipe as a release step during the testing. But clearly there was some sort of issue with that theme.
One of them slipped by, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so now if I reload this, there we go, new theme.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And this one's nice because it's a little easier to customize.
Makes sense.
Okay, so let's go ahead and customize that a little bit. Okay, hold on, I've got some comments here. So DevBit, so I don't have to base the site on a recipe. I can just do it fully with pipelines and config file. Yes, that's absolutely right. And in fact, I don't even use the recipes personally. They're mainly a way to get folks started with a pre-canned set of pipelines and modules for very specific use cases. And like the blog recipe has some, some flexibility in it. It'll pick up pages, it'll pick up blog posts. You can do a lot with that. It'll even pick up Razor files. If you add .cshtml files to your set of files over there, it'll pick those up and run the Razor too. So you can do a lot with that. But I personally like the power of writing my own pipelines because it's not actually all that complicated once you know exactly what you want to do. The blog and docs recipes are really complicated because they're so general, because they're designed to work for lots of people and have lots of flexibility. But if you're building your own site and you know exactly what you want it to do, you don't have to be as flexible. You just write the pipelines and modules to do exactly that. Yeah, so we'll get in that here in a little bit to look at how you write pipelines right in the file. We'll write, I think the cool thing to do here, we'll write a pipeline that pools from the DevChatter RSS feed and gives us a list of everything, all the previous videos. That'll be kind of a cool thing to build.
Yep.
But before we do that, let's play with the theme a little bit here.
Okay, sounds good.
So let me, so the thing that will be helpful to customize the theme is if you open up GitHub, let's open up the YM website first.
Okay.
And go back to the theme page for this.
Okay.
And you'll see.
So we're on Phantom here.
Yeah, go back to Phantom and hit the details. Yep, and if you scroll down, you'll see there's a section for files to override.
Yep, I see that.
The way theming works in YM is that a theme, kind of like a recipe, is just a bunch of pre-canned pipelines. A theme is basically a bunch of pre-canned static assets, CSS files, JavaScript files, and particularly Razor files, Razor layouts, and Razor templates. And so the thing about a theme is that all of that stuff that's in the theme gets pulled in to your site as if it were in your input directory. Mm-hmm. It's not in your input directory. It's in a NuGet package that is downloaded to your system by YM as part of the build process. But YM essentially looks in a cascading set of folders for files. And if it finds a file in a folder that is later in that sequence that has the same name and path as one that was earlier in the sequence, it will use the later file instead of the earlier one. So when we use a theme, basically what we're saying is all of the files that were in this NuGet package, put those into my input folder, but make them like a real low priority, make them come in first. And then any file that I add to my input that has the same name and path as one of the files from the theme, that one is going to take precedence. That's going to be the file that gets used.
Got it. So if I put in something in here that matches the same name as one of the others, it's going to use mine instead of that one.
Exactly. And so each theme, part of the trick of building a reusable theme as opposed to just building your own theme, each theme has a bunch of basically empty files that are designed to be overridden. And so that's what these ones on the web page there, that's telling you some of the more common ones that you can override that are essentially empty in the theme, but that the theme knows to bring in. So if you add that file and then put some other stuff in it, the theme will pick that up as the replacement content for the one that the theme had, which was empty. And your stuff will end up in the page instead of the empty one that was in the theme. And so the reason I went over all that is because that's also how you can do like really sort of sophisticated overrides of a theme. If you really like a theme, but you want to override a little more, but still use the theme, you can actually override any of the files in the theme, including the ones that weren't intended to be overridden. So if you go to the YM GitHub site and like look at what's in the theme.
Yeah, so if I went to the source code of this theme, I could replace any of these files, even though they're probably not intended.
Right, exactly. Yeah,
like, I don't think tags was listed as one of the overrides, right?
No, yeah. Like even better, open up the layout one, layout CS HTML. And that's sort of the master
And the danger here then is if the theme makes some change to improve the overall theme, but I don't get the update because I overrode master, when I get the new version, something might be messed up because I customized it.
That's exactly right, yes.
Yep. Okay.
And that's on you then to do a diff and make sure that you get the changes to the official version integrated with whatever customizations you've made.
Got it, yep.
But yeah, you can pull down any of these files and use them. And in fact, YM sets up a input directory for you. But if you really get into theming and you want to keep your theme separate from your input content, YM will also look in a folder called theme alongside input that doesn't exist by default. But if you add it, you can put your theme overrides or even an entire theme into that folder, and YM will pick that up before your input folder. And so you get this cascade where you get the NuGet package theme files, the theme folder, and then the input folder. And as files get placed in any of those folders, YM sort of aggregates all of that, overriding the ones in the less important folders with the more important. So input is always like the last one to get processed. So anything in input's going to override everything else. The theme folder, your theme folder, gets processed just before input. So you can put your theme customizations or your theme files. If you want to do a totally custom theme, you put your theme files in that theme folder, and those will get picked up before input. And then any theme that you've included gets picked up even before that.
Yeah, so thinking about this, if I'd made a bunch of customizations, I might have them inside of a theme folder, and say if, like, my business, we're going to run, like, 5 different websites that are all running the same theme. Maybe we've got, like, everyone in our company needs a blog, so we're going to set them all up with a blog recipe, but we want this consistent customization of, like, everybody's going to have the same footer and same basic design. But we can do that. They would all maybe share a theme folder of overrides, say, of the Phantom theme. And then if they want to do anything specific, they would do that in their own input folder or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Yep, makes sense.
Yep, and so we've got a question about themes and a quote, rework of YM, which is a great question. In the YM repository last week, I posted a sort of long proposal for some of the changes I'm thinking about bringing to YM 2.0. One of the things that I think has been confusing for people is themes and theme customization, partly because it doesn't work like any other static generator. The theme is sort of hidden in this NuGet package that gets downloaded and sort of included invisibly before your stuff. And that works great for distribution purposes. It makes it nice to bundle everything into this NuGet package. YM knows how to download NuGet packages. But it's confusing because it's invisible. You can't see it. Basically, every other static generator on the planet treats themes as files that you download and put somewhere. Jekyll, Hugo, all of them, the theme installation is basically download this zip file and unzip it into this special folder, and that's your theme. And what you were getting at earlier in terms of if you change those files, then you're responsible for diffing that against whatever the official changes are. People in those ecosystems just deal with it. So in YM, I'm strongly considering switching to that model, partly because it will make things clearer, I think, if when you download a theme, even if you're just using it out of the box, you can see all of the theme files right there in your folder structure, and you can open them and see what they do and read them. I think that'll make things a little bit make more sense for people and make it easier to do those little customizations if you want to. But also there's a secondary reason here, which is the technique that YM themes have used in NuGet. Basically a special kind of NuGet package called a content only package is kind of deprecated anyway. NuGet isn't really supporting those all that well, and there won't be any enhancements to that idea. So it's kind of a safer move to just move to a plain old, I'm just going to download the files. And so when we do that, what's going to end up happening is that you'll probably end up with 3 folders right there in your site root. You'll have the input folder, which contains your stuff, your content, your markdown files. You'll have a theme folder, which contains the sort of theme that you downloaded, the official theme distribution. And you can either edit the theme right in that theme folder, or if you want to continue putting your theme overrides in a separate folder from the official theme, but also separate from your content, we'll probably have a 3rd folder called like overrides or something that you can put that stuff in that ends up sitting in between the theme folder and the input folder. So some changes in theming coming down the road probably to make it a little clearer. But for now, this is kind of how it works. And you can do this now. You can get this effect today if you were to go into the GitHub repo and clone it or download the whole repo, and then just copy the content of that theme folder from the repository into your theme folder locally. That would be equivalent to doing a pound theme phantom. So let's see here. Which page are we editing? We're adding a
About
new
page.
Yep. Okay.
Okay, so I can do that. Now, how do I modify my home page? So like,
Okay.
if I'm on
So
here,
yeah, you notice there's no home page, is there?
yeah,
So the home page in the blog recipe is kind of
it's
set.
just the feed. Yeah. Okay.
So what you're going to want to do is basically just override that whole page.
If I want to put a home page on here, which I probably do.
Yeah.
Yep. Because I'm treating it more like a news feed than a blog.
Right.
Okay.
Yep. So what you're going to want to do is
index.
if you look at the index, it's underscore index there because it's being pulled in by a pipeline. I kind of have a convention where I name files that are part of the theme with underscores. If you look at this is what is driving things now. So if you just want to put some stuff above your blog feed here, you can override the underscore index header page. You can see right here, and this is just Razor. Same thing you'd use in Razor MVC or Razor Pages. And we just have a section with a partial that we'll call index header. And the index header partial itself is mostly empty. It just spits out the description and intro that you give in your config file. But if you want to add a more sophisticated header, you can do that. And then we've got this other stuff here, which is where we start doing your basically blog roll, your feed. So the best suggestion I have is to copy this whole file and stick it in your in a underscore index.cshtml and then start working from there.
Okay. So you think that instead of doing the header one?
Yeah, I would maybe leave the header because the header is the part that's up top in the.
Okay.
Notice how that header is stuck inside of a header section. So this is Razor sort of nested layout style. The header section is up above in the banner of the page. But what you probably want to do, what you're probably thinking you want to do is customize the body of that home page, right?
Yeah, I was thinking, let me go ahead and bring this in here. was like something right here might be like information, links, some kind of body on the page right in the center spot, and then maybe below it have the feed or something like that, or maybe, show the most recent 3 news, blog posts, we'll say, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Something
So
like that.
in this header section,
Uh-huh.
or in this index page, what you'll probably want to do is just start. You can see how it's going to end up here. We'll do, we'll put a paragraph there so you can see where it's going to end up, and
Okay.
then
Let me
modify this stuff to maybe not include as much, right? If you just want, say, titles, we can strip out where we've got the lead and the content and the
was
excerpt.
it watch? Is that what preview watch? Is that the one I want to do?
You want to do minus preview minus watch.
Okay.
Yep, or -p-w or
shorthand. Yeah, that'd be a nice shorthand, but this still works because I know what preview and watch are when I see it.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get that going, and now we can actually just modify. I assume. Does this does it automatically rebuild theme when you mess with theme files?
Yes, because it's treating theme files just like any other file. The term theme in YAM is more a convention than a actual thing.
Okay.
A theme is just some files that you're including before your own input files.
Got it.
There's no special relevance or logic imparted to themes, so they'll rebuild just like any other file.
And so I'm assuming, was there some kind of... I don't see it. I was wondering if there was something in here that was related to that, but I can't easily identify what it is.
So you can see about, what is it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 6 pipelines down, there's a pipeline called index. And that's got your index page on it.
Yeah.
That's the pipeline that builds your index page. And you'll see it has to go, so pipelines are sequential, at least for now. And so they have to go in a particular sequence because there's some chicken and egg problems that happen, right? The index page is listing your blog posts, right?
Okay.
So you need the blog posts to have been read and interpreted before the index page is evaluated. Otherwise, there'd be nothing to look at. We haven't read those yet.
So I put the for example, if I put these blog posts on another page and not on the index page, I would need to do a pipeline customization then to tell it, hey, you need to run this separate page after that other one.
Right, except I think that we're already running pages after.
Okay.
If we look at the order, I think the blog posts are coming in pretty early. But you'll notice if we go back to that list of pipelines, this is a trick that people are going to need to use if you want to end up writing your own config files, that we have sort of 2 pipelines for some of this stuff that gets used in other places. We have a pages and a blog post pipeline right up front.
Yep, and I assumed pages did my about page.
Exactly, yes.
Okay, yep.
And blog post does your blog post pages. But these pipelines do not actually write the HTML to disk. You'll notice much further down, there's some extra pipelines called render. We have a render pages, render blog posts. And those are what actually spits out the HTML and reads the Razor files. And the reason we have to do that is because the blog post pages themselves contain links to other blog post pages. So if we tried to read and render those at once, we wouldn't know all of the blog posts to render on other blog post pages. So you end up getting into some of these sort of chicken and egg games you play where you have to load the page and interpret the front matter and get the metadata set, and then kind of just leave that sit in a pipeline so that other pipelines can use it, and then come back to it in a subsequent pipeline to actually do the rendering of that thing.
Yep, that makes total sense.
That's all the static generators have to do that. It's just a little more obvious in YAM because it's more direct, it's more customizable. Most of that sort of ordering is hidden for you by tools like Hugo and Jekyll. Yep, so we should have, if we go back to the home page now, you should see our paragraph there, the hi there. Do we see it?
I don't see it.
So we have welcome, first post, index, CS, HTML. Is this in the right folder? It is. Let's see here.
Let me try making the theme folder then. New folder. Theme. Oh, nope, not team. Theme. And I will toss this file over into the theme folder. Yep, move it over there. So we have a new theme folder over there. We have hi there.
Yep, and that it should be equivalent. It shouldn't need to be in one or the other. Do we have the title correct? Underscore index CS HTML. We do.
Unless it changed recently because I copied it out of here. We're definitely using Phantom. Yep. And I assume it uses, does it use latest develop branch or does it use latest of master branch? That should make a difference.
Latest of master is the release, but it should make a difference. The themes haven't changed.
Not enough to matter, at least.
Okay, so the question is, why is our index file not coming out? Try doing a control reload. Maybe you're getting a cache. I wonder if your browser might be caching.
That's what I was actually trying.
Oh, okay.
Yep, still nothing. Huh. Yeah, I would think it would be right under the welcome and right before the word first post.
Yeah, it should be. So welcome is part of that header, index header.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get right into this other stuff.
That right there, yep, that's all of it. So.
Okay, what happens? So try, just remove that whole block. I'm curious if that removes.
Yes, are we really even using this?
Yeah.
No, okay. Whoops, I'm on first post right now. But let's go back here. There we go. Nope, nothing.
Okay, let's switch back to our command line and see is it actually running. The dev server is up, but are we actually watching? Is it rebuilding? No, it is rebuilding. Okay, give it a second. Okay, try reloading now. It just rebuilt. So let's see.
Yeah, everything should have disappeared, right? Because we deleted that, so
yep,
it's still
all
here.
Still there. Okay, so it's not picking up that index file for some reason. So let's go into.
I'm gonna try shutting it down and starting it up again and see if that gets it. Do I have an old YM version, Blue Hamster?
What version are we on? Chaco should be the latest, although their approval process is kind of slow.
No.
-- help. Yeah.
Help. YM version 0184.
4, that sounds right.
Till, the quick explanation. We are doing static site generation using YM. So essentially it takes a bunch of input files, sends it through a customizable pipeline of modules, and creates a site out of it. Current version is 141. Wow, that'd be way out of date then.
Oh, are you? What did it say you were? Oh, yeah, wow.
Yeah.
So that's a problem.
How did I end up with that? Based on your sources, it says by getting you accept that chocolatey upgraded one package. What?
Oh, you know what? That explains the other crashes we had earlier too. Yeah, because that is way out of date.
Yeah, that'd be weird.
So what's the latest? Let's check Chaco. Does Chaco have the wrong feed here?
I don't know. They must have pulled like something. I don't know. Let me try this again. Help. No, I still have an old one. All right. Well, you mentioned another way of getting it.
So have you? Yeah, I mean we can download.
Yeah,
the
that is
zip
quite
file.
old.
Well, so I wonder if maybe you previously downloaded it and it's in your path, and
Yeah.
that's overriding chocolatey.
That could be.
In which case, we'll want to fix the path anyway.
Yes. Let me see if it's in mine. It's not explicitly in my path. I just checked. That's a good question. I'm wondering why Chocolatey won't update it though.
My guess is that Chocolatey probably did and did the install correctly, and you've probably got a older version sitting around, and that path is taking precedence over the one that Chocolatey added.
Guess on where that would be and where I could delete that from then?
So if you would use the installer a long time, we don't even make the installer anymore because it had issues. We were using an installer tool. But I think that used to install it to user app data.
Well, let's see if we can get rid of it. There we go. Now let's...
Do you see it in there?
Yeah, I found it.
Okay.
I had another version of it that was not the Chocolatey one.
Okay, that explains a lot.
Because I had an add remove programs one.
Yeah, so that's the old installer. You might be able to just remove that right from remove programs.
I did. That's what I told it to do. So we're gonna see if it worked.
Yeah, see if that worked, and we might have to manually remove the path. Part of the reason I stopped using that installer is because it didn't.
Oh,
it wasn't great about cleanup.
Look at that. 141. There we go. Cleanup worked fine. Apparently.
Okay, good.
Or fine enough.
Now we are cooking. Okay.
I also noticed the ASCII logo changed.
Yes, yeah, a lot changed in the 1.0 release.
Yeah, there we go.
You know what? I should have noticed from the logo earlier that you were on the old version.
Well, that was the first thing I noticed. I'm like, hey, the ASCII art's different. Wait. So now I want to do --preview --watch.
Yep.
All right, there we go. So now I can reload this, and that should actually work. We're here, and hey, all the stuff's gone. Fantastic. Let's Control-Z it all back. Hey, and it's reloading when I do it.
Yep,
cool.
Yeah, so now it's using the right file, and everything's working the way it should.
Yeah, it's reloading faster, too. It was doing it previously, but it's gotten better, apparently.
You were on a very old version.
That's impressive.
To be honest, I'm surprised it even worked.
Yeah, I'm amazed it worked too. That was pretty cool. That actually says something pretty good. I'm impressed. If that's from whenever someone said that was from.
Yeah.
Yeah, DevBit said where it was from.
Yeah. So DevBit over there, you kind of saved the day here. You saved the whole live stream.
Yes. Awesome job, everybody.
Yeah, we might have been looking at that for the remainder of the time, trying to figure out what happened.
Yep. So how do we customize this then to get a page? So we just want to put something up here, essentially. So we can just put some kind of a div.
Yep. Just type whatever you want up there. Note that this theme is not using Bootstrap. In fact, I don't think many of these themes are. They were all basically ported from. There's a great site, HTML5 Up, and this guy does amazing sort of lightweight HTML themes for simple sites like blogs and one-pagers. So most of the existing blog themes have been ported from themes on that site, but they all have custom CSS. So there's no Bootstrap in any of these themes. If Bootstrap is your thing and you want to do that, then it's pretty easy to spit out your own custom theme. Even for the blog recipe, it really only requires like 2 files that are required for the recipe. The rest of these files in the pre-canned themes are ones that the theme itself defines as like includes. the recipe, the blog recipe, only actually looks for 2. It needs a underscore layout, and I think the underscore index is required as well, so it knows what to do for the index page.
Yeah. Okay, makes sense. So we've got something there, so we can definitely customize that. What other? So we know how to get this here. What other things do you recommend we look at?
So let's switch back to, go ahead and, because generally a new theme's going to kind of mess it up, but let's switch back. You like solid state, so let's switch back to solid state now that we've got a working version.
So if we want to do that, we go back here and we change this to solid state.
Yep, and you'll probably want to kill your command line and restart it since we're downloading a new NuGet package.
Yeah, and I'm going to get rid of the index CSHTML, even though it probably also has one. It probably different enough.
So what's going to end up happening there is...
well, I assume it crashed because I changed the config file?
Yeah, and you changed it in a way that it couldn't recover.
Yeah.
It's pretty good about watching changes in the files in your input, and changing the config file sometimes works, but there's a limit to how much it can do since that gets run through Roslyn. If you change it in a way that it's going to require a different set of assemblies, that's usually when it'll crash on the reload.
Oh, I still got a crash.
Is it the same one as earlier with solid state?
I think it's a different one on solid state. The partial view sidebar was not found.
Okay, well, we still have a theme folder, which appears to contain a index file. So I wonder if that might also be messing it up. Yeah, so what I was saying, which might get to this, is the official themes all follow kind of a similar convention, but their file layout is not required for the recipe.
Yeah, so my index CSHTML was calling for a sidebar that did not exist on
in the solid state
theme. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So now it's running. Now I should have to refresh this time. Yep, there we go. And now we have the solid state theme. I like it.
Now I have the solid state theme, which is kind of a more stylistic thing here. It's less minimal.
Yep. I like it. It looks good. So then we want to do some stuff with it. So
yeah. So let's go ahead and add. We can add back let's add back the index file and customize that a little bit, and then we'll get to, just make sure we have enough time here.
Okay.
We'll get to actually writing a pipeline, which is kind of fun.
Okay, so I'm gonna go steal the index CSHTML off of the solid state theme again, and I'm gonna put this back inside the input folder for now, since I'm not planning on more than one site using this. And if I steal this whole thing, paste it over here, save that. Oh, I saw this refresh. Okay, so this just refreshed. And just to be sure that it's working here, I'm going to come down here.
Add some customization. And then you can, now that you've got this in here, you can customize it however you want. You can simplify the blog roll there. You can remove the blog roll, add some images, whatever it is you want to do to it, you can do.
Yeah, okay. Div something here on the home page. Okay, sounds good. So we can put something there on the home page. And actually, it looks like we're probably going to want to mess with the header too on ours. But that's an expected customization.
Right, yeah. So you can do that. The simple way to do that is to change those settings at the top of your config file that contain things like host and title and description. If you change those, you can kind of customize what goes up there. There's also an intro. So like if you want something to appear under that welcome, if you add a intro, so let's come in here and add an intro setting.
Let me see if I can anchor to you.
Yeah, settings is just it's just a dictionary. It's a special kind of dictionary that does automatic type conversions for you, but it's really just a dictionary.
Oh man,
chat. I'll just do a little intro here.
So a couple of things. So Till, yeah, it's been fairly intuitive. You'll watch the beginning of the stream if you catch the video. So you watch the earlier part, you'll see that I was able to figure out some of the stuff. Like as he's explaining, I'm like, okay, so I was able to sort of understand and intuit some things. So there's definitely some stuff that makes sense. Also, Dave, you made this. I made this. Everybody's making jokes in the chat that I need to put like I made this. And DevBit, you need to click the spacebar after you hit a period. Because our Nightbot keeps thinking that DevBit is typing in links. Because, like, it.works. It's not a link, but Nightbot sure thinks it is. Alright, so, the intro, that's a cool... So, did you save that file? Are you able to save the files?
I think so. I don't have a little circle anymore. Did it save? I think it did.
I think you saved it. Did this crash? Oh, this crashed. So it didn't like you changing the 1am file there.
Yeah, I changed the settings, yeah.
Yeah. Wait, error while compiling configuration. Wait, did we mess something up? Yes, you did. Yes.
C#. Oh, no semi. Yeah. So the what I was saying is this should be a...
Oh, that is a quote.
A string, yeah.
But that needed a semicolon. Okay.
Yeah, so the config file is basically C# code.
Oh, okay.
There's a little bit of DSL stuff going on behind the scenes before we send it to the C# compiler. A few little things get changed, so that's got some specialization in there. But for the most part, it's C# code. It's kind of a superset of C# because there's some interesting shortcuts you can do. But for the most part, it's C#. And the settings dictionary is just a dictionary. So where we have like settings blog keys description, blog keys.description is just a static property. Blog keys is a static class that it brings in by default, and description is just a static property of that class that is the string description. So for intro, we could have put blog keys.intro because that intro string is also defined in the blog keys class.
Oh, okay.
But it's just a string. All of these are just strings.
Got it.
It's just a string key dictionary. So intro as a string works as well. And the cool thing is you can add whatever settings you want here, and they'll be available to your own Razor files in your own templates.
So if I open, so you're saying that if I go look at the, what is it, the header file on this one, or index header? It was index header, right? Index header. In this file, it's going to be grabbing blogkeys.intro is the string that it's pulling in.
Right, exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it did context.string blogkeys.intro and put that value in there. Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, part of the themes, if you really want to start customizing them, you know, a little bit of spelunking is good, which gets back to why I said in the next version, the next major version, I'm considering just having you copy the whole theme into your local folder system. So it's much more clear what's going on, and it's easier to open up those theme files and see what's in them.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that makes sense.
So let's go back to your config file, and we'll create a whole new pipeline here.
Okay. Sounds good.
Go ahead and kill the command prompt, or at least kill this build.
Otherwise, it's going to break.
We're going to do some stuff that it won't be able to rebuild on the watch since we're going to edit the config file.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so I actually have one other question. Should I push up my output folder into my source control? I feel like not.
Good question. No, you should not.
Okay.
Because the output think of it like your bin folder for an application. It's designed to be ephemeral. It's designed to be deleted and recreated. So you should never check that one in. You also want to, if you're doing a git ignore, you also want to exclude these three config.ym files. The config.ym itself you want to check in, but config.ym.star you want to exclude. Config.ym.dll, config.ym.hash, and config.ym.packages.xml should all be excluded.
So config.ym, ym hash, and ym packages?
Yeah, or just do a config.ym.star as an exclusion, and that'll exclude them. You want the root config.ym, but then all the extra extension ones are basically caches of your config file so that it builds faster. And just delete, and we'll delete this other packages XML. That was from your old version. The new hotness is config, the name of your config file, .packages.xml.
Okay. Makes sense. All right, so I'm going to update the gitignore first. And then I'm going to... so then you deleted that file.
Yeah,
I love that you can delete files. That's so weird though. When it's like when a file gets deleted, I'm like, whoa, he just deleted a file off my computer while I was in another screen. Like,
just wait for me to get that live share command prompt and own your system.
No, that was great. That was great. Yeah. Yeah. So the weird part. Let me tell you all the scary thing that he's alluding to. In live share, I have share a terminal. So I can actually like share a terminal window with Dave. So like I would let him run code on my computer if I clicked that. So I'm not clicking that for obvious reasons. Despite that, Dave seems like a nice guy.
Like a nice guy.
Totally safe. Yeah. I mean, just because I've never met him before in real life, only over the internet.
What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah. And actually, I do have some trust of him. We do know some of the same people. Did I tell you that I used to be an MVP for Microsoft MVP for a bunch of years?
No, cool.
Yeah, so I was for a while, so I know probably like half of the developer MVPs probably, and so it's always funny because you're a developer MVP of some kind, right, for Microsoft?
Yeah, Visual Studio, yeah.
Okay, yeah, so the weird part is you and I, as far as I know, haven't met before, like at a summit or anything like that, but I can guarantee you we know like 24 of the same people.
Oh, no, yeah, we probably have very similar circles.
Yes. So it's always weird when I run into someone like, oh, hey, we know all the same people. I've never met you. Like, this is weird. I don't know how. It's always funny.
Okay, so let's do some customization to our config file here. So this gets into DevBit. You asked earlier about writing your own quote-unquote recipes, which really comes down to writing your own pipelines and adding modules to them. So we're going to do kind of a powerful one here. What we're going to do is write some code to connect to the Twitch RSS feed for DevChatter, and pull down the set of videos that are on this stream that have already been sort of saved, and we'll pull those down from the RSS feed and then make those available to display on the site, maybe on the homepage or somewhere.
Is there an RSS feed for the videos?
There is. Let me open it up. I know this because I just had to figure out how to do this for discover.net.
Neat. I didn't know that was a thing.
So if you go to, let's see here. Let me look up the one for DevChatter. It's not publicized very well.
Twitch RSS feed link.
Okay, so the feed link is, if you go to Twitch, okay, so here's how I did it. There actually isn't an RSS feed, but there is someone, you found it, yeah. There is some enterprising individual who has made a Twitch to RSS converter, which appears to work really well. It's been working great for me for a few weeks now.
So this is it?
Yes.
Okay. All right, cool. Go some random guy for making that available.
An RSS feed of your Twitch stream, which we will pull in since RSS is a good syndication format.
Yeah, okay.
We'll pull this in and work with it. So let's go back to your config file here, and I will just start typing some stuff. So YAM includes an RSS module, but it's designed to output RSS, not read RSS. One to read RSS is a potential enhancement, but we don't have that today. So what we're going to do is pull in, Microsoft has one. This is a port of the old WCF RSS reader writer for .NET Core now.
So I see you did the N there. Does that mean to go to NuGet?
Yes. So this could have, we wrote pound recipe, pound theme.
Oh, could that have been R&T?
Yes, it could have been R&T, and this could be
Nice.
pound NuGet.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
And this is saying version 1.0.2.
Okay.
So this is going to tell YAM to go get this NuGet package, and more importantly, once we've got the NuGet package, to look for all compatible assemblies within the package and bring those into scope within my YAM config here. So we're bringing those assemblies. We're going to reference them automatically from the NuGet package, but we also have to bring the namespaces into scope. So let's bring those in.
Makes sense. You said this was going to get run as C# code.
Yeah, this is basically just a C# file. And so let's go ahead and add a new pipeline. So we will. So there's a static pipelines collection that we will use here, and it's got a add method. What do we want to call this? We'll call this just feed, not food, feed. Now I'm hungry. So we'll add the pipeline feed. So this adds the pipeline but doesn't do anything. So what we do now is we start adding modules, and adding modules is easy because you just stick in, module 1, module 2, whatever. And these modules do things. So what we want to do is let's get some metadata from the feed. So let's go ahead and think about what module we want to use for that. Let's bring up our, sorry, hang on. Got a message from the family upstairs.
Oh, yeah, yeah. My family actually stepped out for a little bit, so.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for. Do you remember that thing last year with the newscaster guy and the baby running in? Yeah, I'm just waiting for that moment.
Oh, I get cats on my stream actually. They like to. So I have a standing desk, so if people can't tell, like from my movement around, I'm standing. I have a cat that either tries to knock down my green screen, claws that chair to get attention, or tries to climb my leg. So, the climbing the leg is the worst one. So.
Okay, so let's do, since this is kind of customized behavior, we're going to want to write some code to get this RSS feed, since we brought in the syndication feed reader writer. So let's go ahead and I'm going to make a little class here. So we're going to make this class, and in fact, you know what? Let's do this, and then we will just give it a static method. So YAM pipelines are not asynchronous. They are intentionally synchronous. Some sort of asynchronous support may be coming in the future, but that's tricky because there's an ordering. Remember, there's a lot of the static generation stuff is all about doing things in a particular sequence. So you want to make sure that you honor that when you start doing like parallel pipelines. But within a particular module, you can do whatever you want. So we're going to go ahead and make a async. Since the syndication reader writer is async, we're going to go ahead and make an async. God, I can't type. That's what happens trying to look at the feed and look at this thing. Okay, we're going to make an async task here to get our feed data.
Glad you said that, because now anybody lurking in stream that wonders any time in the future, or about any previous times where I wasn't able to type while talking to everybody on stream, it's like, no, seriously, it's not easy.
This is real. Yeah, this is hard.
Yeah. Live
kinda
code
looking at
streams aren't
three
as
things
easy
at
as
once.
yeah, because you gotta be looking at what they're saying. You're looking at your code. You're looking at the preview. And you're trying to talk about it all. So two inputs, two outputs at the same time. It's kind of crazy.
Okay, so we're going to make a helper method here. And remember when I said earlier that the way YM works, the sort of most fundamental concept is we have these documents, and they're represented by the iDocument interface. And
let me do one quick thing here. Hang on one second. There you go.
Oh, yeah, make it fit. Yeah, good call.
Yep.
So a module basically takes in a sequence of documents and outputs a sequence of documents. And the input documents could be related to the output documents. The output documents could be a transformation of the input documents, or the output documents could be totally new, separate things, and you just totally ignore the inputs. But what we're going to do here is we are going to, before we do anything else, we're basically creating a custom module. But I'm not going to do a custom module, even though they're really easy to write. If you want to write a custom module, it's basically this.
That makes sense.
One class that returns a document called execute, and then basically this same signature. Right. So this would be this is a module. All of the modules are basically this with code that does stuff inside of them. But we're gonna use a helper method instead, just because I think it's a little clearer what's going on sometimes. But we're going to use a special module called execute to run our little custom helper. So what the execute module does is it basically lets you run arbitrary code as a module.
Okay. So I assume you're just going to put like a lambda expression in there or something?
That's exactly right. That's exactly what I'm going to do. And so execute is really good if you want to do like a simple lambda. In fact, you don't even have to do a helper method. Like it's great if you just want to do a little lambda. But we are going to...
So inputs and context go in there.
Yep, the inputs and the context. And it also takes one additional copy. If we bring up let's go to the website and bring up the execute module documentation so you can see kind of how module documentation maps to the code I'm typing.
Okay, so modules, and then somewhere in this list is execute. Okay, right here.
Yep, and so you can see once we bring up execute.
Let me toss that better there so everybody can see this, because we'll otherwise be covering up a little bit of it with chat, which is what we've been doing with our website, but it wasn't much to see yet.
Yep, so you can see we've got several different overloads of the execute module here.
I see there's one that takes in an execute action. Then there's another one that does the same thing, one that just takes in a context.
Yep, and then the context config and document config are sort of special delegates. And then this last one is the one we're using.
Yeah, it looked like you were using this one.
Yeah, the third parameter helps with overload resolution. You're not supposed to use it. So this was a little thing I posted on Twitter a while back. It turns out that .NET is really bad about figuring out the correct overload for lambdas when you have some stuff that looks similar. So in order to sort of make this work the right way for this particular overload, there's an extra lambda argument that does nothing, comes across as null. So you just have to put it in there as an underscore to basically say, this is the overload that I want.
Because it has trouble telling the funcs apart.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep,
yeah.
That makes sense.
So, everyone watching on the stream, just ignore this. This is just kind of silly. You just have to do it for this lambda so it gets the right overload.
So quick explanation for anyone that doesn't know what this is, because it's fairly new. This is part of C#. C# 7, I think, is what added this feature in. This underscore that he included here, that's called a discard in C#. And essentially, there are a number of places where instead of declaring a variable, you can just put in an underscore, and that's basically saying, I don't care about this value, and it will be completely ignored. So essentially, he doesn't really have that variable, so he put the variable name just as a single underscore.
Yep. So then this lambda, all this is going to do is we're going to go ahead and call our special async get feed data method and then get its result. So we are going to block on it within our module, but because the method is async, we can then do asynchronous code within this method, and that'll get run asynchronously until we eventually end up blocking on it and waiting for the result here. But that's okay. The result is our output sequence of documents, which will then get passed on to the next module that we'll put in.
Okay.
For now, let's go ahead and write the code for getting our feed. Okay. We are going to I'm just going to go ahead and start typing some code here. So what we want to return is a set of, well, we don't really care about the inputs here because we know what our input is. Our input is going to be an empty document. Every module, the first module of every pipeline starts with a single document as its input, and that is an empty document without content that contains basically the metadata for your settings. You can also get to the settings through the context, but all documents kind of start with that. So some modules kind of take that initial empty document and run with it. Some ignore it and then output their own stuff. So we're just going to totally ignore it. So let's go ahead and fire up a web client. And let's see here. Do we need? I think we're going to need a using system.net as well to get access to web client. Okay, so
we need to put parens around that, don't we?
Yep, we do.
Let me do horrible things while you're doing that.
Okay, so we're going to create a web client, and then we're going to go ahead and we're going to nest a whole bunch of stuff in here in order to get access to our stream for the feed.
Oh, see, I'm getting yelled at by the stream because I'm drinking a Diet Dr. Pepper Cherry on stream today. And someone noticed. Normally I drink Pepsi Max on the stream. Noodles Company.
How about this? Yep.
I don't even know what that is.
You don't?
No. What is that?
My kids love it. It's a fast casual restaurant where you can get all manner of carbohydrates.
That makes sense.
So let's copy. Can you copy the link to the RSS feed into the little parens, into the quote there?
I do believe I can. Let's see. It was Twitch RSS feed, this thing. Okay, that should be ours. Where did you want me to put this in?
In the open read task async call.
What, open read. Oh, sorry, I can't see it. Yep, I got it now.
Oh yeah, are they off
He
to
was
the
off
side
screen,
here?
yeah.
Yeah, so let's.
All right, I'm gonna make Till happy for a second here. Yeah, you hear that sound? Yeah.
So question, do you have to write all code in the config file? No, you don't. In fact, one pattern that people have gotten used to who do really complicated sites is to write their code in Visual Studio as a library and then compile that into an assembly and then do this. Stick that assembly alongside your config file and then pull it in with a #A pound assembly directive as a library. And then that will give you access to all of the helpers that you wrote inside of that assembly within your config file. For now, though, you at least need to kind of start with the config file if you want to use the command line application. Now, YAM is written in such a way that if you really wanted to, you could skip all of this and not use the YAM exec application, and instead basically do your own application using the YAM core components and basically set up the YAM engine yourself. It takes about 20 or 30 lines of code to embed YAM in your own app, but it's certainly doable. In fact, I know of at least one user who has switched to basically using LinkPad as their driver for static site generation. They do all of their code in LinkPad because they get, you get nice IntelliSense. It's got a fast iterative loop. You just hit the play button and it goes. It's got a debugger. And they basically bring in the YAM.core NuGet packages and set up the YAM engine within LinkPad, and then LinkPad is their static site generator. And in those cases, you're basically typing the same stuff. You're just doing it in LinkPad instead of in this .ym C# script file. Yep. But a good thing to keep in mind, I mentioned earlier in the stream that some changes are coming in the next version. There's a very good chance that mode is going to kind of become the official mode, and we may either do away with the config script here or deprecate it. There's an interesting issue in the YAM repository if you want to go read on the reasons behind that and really what it means. I say that, I dropped the bomb in the stream here, and people who are following along are like, oh, why am I even learning all this stuff then? Why are we doing this? It will end up looking very, very similar to what we're doing here. So not a lot would change. This is all still relevant. It's just instead of going in a .ym script, it goes in a normal .cs file, but it looks the same. Okay, so we're going to get our stream reader, and then we have one more thing that we are going to construct here. We are going to create a XML reader for the feed because RSS feeds are XML. And I have no doubt I've forgotten at least one using that we're probably going to have to get in here after it shouts at us. Okay, so we're going to do some special settings here. So let's move this down. And we want a async XML reader since we've got an async stream. And we're going to ignore DTD processing because RSS feeds don't typically use DTDs. And the .NET XML reader is very touchy about getting those DTDs in there and validating those. So it's best if we just totally ignore validating that. Mm-hmm. Okay, so now we've got our stuff. So we now have an XML reader that is reading our Twitch RSS feed. So let's go ahead and move to content, and let's dump out a little message here just so we know we're working. So because YAM right now is a script and there isn't great debugging for that, you're kind of back to old school debugging.
Where we have to spit out information to tell
Yeah,
us what's happening.
This trace function is helpful because it lets you dump stuff to the console as it's running. And if you ever, if you need to start debugging things, you typically just start dumping out various trace information, and that helps. So let's create a XML feed reader, which is part of the syndication reader writer. And I know we're kind of off on a little bit of a tangent here. This is not necessarily YAM. We're kind of showing how you can write your own code in YAM to do cool things. The thing I want everyone to sort of realize here is that the sky's the limit. You can do anything you want in this code because it is just code.
Yeah, so just because you committed to a static site generator doesn't mean you're left without the ability to customize.
Right, and that was kind of the whole founding principle of YAM, is that I got really into static generators, but got really frustrated with a lot of the existing ones because they had a lot of limits as to how far you could go with that customization. As long as you were inside the sandbox, it was okay. A lot of them can be highly customized in terms of like look and feel and things that you're doing. But when you want to start like querying APIs to pull down data or integrating with like headless content management systems or doing that kind of thing, you hit a wall. And you start to get forced into whatever language that generator is written in. And so, I like .NET, so why not write one for .NET that does this? If anyone listening is into static generators, YAM most closely resembles one in the JavaScript ecosystem called Metalsmith. And Metalsmith's whole thing is a sort of similar pipeline-based, modular, you tell it what to do from square one and it goes and does it generator, similar to YAM. Okay, let's go ahead and so the way the syndication reader writer works is you give it a loop and you tell it to read stuff. And each time it reads a thing, you kind of have to figure out what that thing is. So that's what we're checking element type for.
Okay.
And so let's see, what do we want to do here? What sort of item? Let's go ahead and, so I've got some reference code for syndication reader writer over here on the side. I'm looking at to see how far we want to go with this.
I assumed, since you said you'd written one of these recently,
yeah,
it would be crazy to write this by hand and just hope that it worked well on a stream.
Okay, so we don't really care about the person. We know who that is. The image we don't care about because you can add that in. A lot of this RSS stuff is important if you're pulling in like a lot of RSS feeds and you want to include some metadata about those. But we don't really care about any of that. What we really care about is the item itself or the content of the thing. Yeah, let's add an item. So really the main type of thing we care about is item. In fact, since that's really the only thing we care about, we can probably just do this as an if statement.
Yeah, so while you're typing that, the basic idea here is that those using blocks that we're using, for anyone who's a C# noob that's watching along, that basically says keep track of this object and clean it up when we're done. So that's something that usually makes some kind of external connection so we don't leave the connection open. So that's what those do, which we have one here with the web client, one here with the stream. Don't click and drag, Brendan. Don't click and drag. And then we also have a using statement here. And then we've got another one here. And basically each one of these using statements just says the object that I'm declaring is just going to live for the length of this curly brace. And then at the closing curly brace, that's where it's going to get cleaned up. So there's actually an alternate syntax to this that we could be using that just has to deal with how C# works. So if we didn't want to nest this far, we can actually simplify it. Which
Yeah,
actually
you
maybe
could exclude the braces. Yeah, go ahead and.
yeah, I'll clean up all these braces. So we'll just do
Yeah,
this.
I tend to have some old school habits. I always use braces. I don't use bar. I get made fun of a lot for my my. Some of my programming habits tend to be a little
Yeah.
old man shouting at cloudish.
Yeah, I mean, I
kinds
have
of
the same
things,
thing. Like once you've been programming long enough, you just pick up these things that you're like, oh yeah, this is the way I've been doing this forever. And then, whoops. So if we write it like this, it's not quite so far shifted over. So essentially you can just say using, 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 and it looks like that's in line and they're the same context and we can declare each one. And this is actually the exact same code it was before. It's just that each curly brace technically only had one statement in it, and that was the next using. So essentially now this is the context of all four of those. Is this end curly braces when they all clean up?
Yeah, so DevBit has a comment. As a C# noob, I feel kind of lost trying to understand this example. I get that right now. Basically, you can treat this method as a black box. We'll get into going back to some of the pre-canned modules here in a second, which is really the part that you need to understand. What we're writing here essentially has nothing to do with YM. And this is pretty complex nested C# code just because that's the way this RSS reading library works. And that seemed like a good sort of thing that we could add to the site that was custom. A lot of these sort of execute module code tends to look much simpler. It might be something simple like adding an extra bit of metadata or formatting something or doing much more simple C# code. I wouldn't get too hung up on the stuff we're writing right this second. This certainly is not needed to use YM, and it's kind of a niche edge case though. So what we're going to do here, when we have a RSS item, what we want to do is output a document. So I'm going to make a list of documents. We'll call it outputs. And we're going to add RSS items to that list of output documents. So when we're done, that's what we're going to return. So now what we're doing is creating a YM document from the RSS item. Okay, and so this is really the brunt of what YM does. This is what a module does. A lot of the module code for the built-in modules follows a similar pattern to this in that it does something and then outputs the resulting documents for the next module in line to pick up. You'll notice we're inputting documents as well. And I remember I said this particular module, the inputs don't matter. Other modules down the line, though, this inputs is going to contain the documents that we're outputting here, so that then they'll be able to operate on those by either outputting pages, using the metadata, doing something with that. So let's create our document here. So the first thing is this document is mainly just going to be some metadata. So to get a document, we use a special method on the context. Does that highlight show up on yours when I highlight?
Yes.
Okay, good. So this iExecution context is sort of the master thing for using stuff in YM. It contains all of our non-document specific settings and code and logic. And one of the things it does for us is that's how we create documents. It acts as a document factory for us.
Mm-hmm.
So I am going to create a new document. And we are going to, let's see, I don't really care about the input, so I can just ignore that. Let's open up, while I'm doing this, why don't you open up the YM documentation and go to the API tab.
Okay.
And in the left-hand side of the API tab, oh, you've got squished up so you can't see it. There you go. There's a little search bar. If you type in iExecution context in the search in the upper left, it'll come up and you can click on it. And that shows you all of the stuff the context can do. But what we're using right now, if you scroll down that page a little bit, you'll see all of the various overloads for getting a document.
Okay, so get document with a files path stream, and with an IEnumerable bool, a document file path, and
yep, so
IEnumerable, yep.
The overload we're going to use is the one that just takes an IEnumerable of metadata, since we don't care about the input document. A lot of these
right down here.
Git documents are designed, a lot of these that have iDocument as the first argument are designed to essentially clone an existing document and then set other things on it, either change the content because you transformed it, add additional metadata, stuff like that. But since we don't care about the input document, we just have to add metadata. So I'm going to use a special class here called metadata items, which is basically a dictionary. And we're going to add some metadata to this. So let's add, we have a item here as our syndication item. So let's add the title. Okay, well, first things first, we have to get the item. So let's get our syndication item.
Okay, so that's pulling that off of our feed reader object.
Yep. So now we've got a strongly typed iSyndication item from the feed reader, which we knew was available because we checked that item was the cursor that it was on, the thing that is next to come up. And so now from that item, we can get the title. Let's get the item.title. And it's important to know metadata in YM can be anything. It doesn't have to be strings. So I could do something like this. And that would stuff the entire iSyndication item in a single metadata for this document. And then in my Razor, I could get that item and then operate on the item directly instead of basically exploding it out.
Instead of pulling out the individual values.
Yeah.
Okay.
Either way is fine. I do both depending on the context and what I'm trying to accomplish. In this case, because it gets us a few different nice metadata things, we'll pull out all of these separately. Okay, so this code is going to be a little goofy. RSS feeds are pretty bonkers. Don't think too hard about this code that I'm writing right now. In fact, I'll just leave it as one line so it goes off the screen so people don't look at it. Just trust that that little code there gets the link from the RSS feed. It turns out that RSS, even though it's a standard, it's not a well-documented standard, and like no one follows it correctly. So sometimes you have to do little tricks to figure out what's what. So this should be item published. What else can we get here? Okay, let's get one more, the description.
Sounds good.
Okay, so now we've got a document. So let's...
So I just want to give you the heads up that we should... I will be quickly coming up to my time limit for today.
Yes, as will I. So we'll speed this up here.
So let's toss this on, even if it means we're missing a thing.
Okay, so now let's do something with this real quick.
And I am good with doing another one of these at some point if there was something else you wanted to show that we didn't get to.
We'll see what kind of demand there is here.
Yep.
Okay, so we've got an execute module that gets some stuff. Now let's, we'll just do kind of a dummy output here. So just to get something quick. So let's do a content module. So content is another one of the built-in modules. And what it does is it basically takes each input document and changes the content of that document. Now remember, right here, we're not adding any content. So each of our input documents at this point has empty content. There's nothing in it. So we are going to go ahead and add something to it. So content takes several different overloads, but the one I'm going to use gives us a doc and a context. And so now I've got for each, what this is saying, for each input document to this module, run this code. And whatever this code returns, the string value of that will be used as the content of the document. So we're going to go ahead and just output a nice little interpolated string here. So the way metadata works on documents is that the document itself is a dictionary of its metadata. The document content is typically found under the content property. So if you want to get access to a document's content, you do doc.content. But if you want to get access to any of its metadata, you treat it like a dictionary. That will give you the untyped metadata. It also has several overloads that will automatically convert types for you. So if I do doc.string and then the name of one of the metadata keys, that basically says, I don't care what is at that key in the dictionary, what type of thing, call toString on that thing and get me the string value, and that's what I want to have back. There's also things like that for int. And the neat thing about the document and the metadata, remember I said earlier, it's like a special dictionary. So it knows how to do all kinds of cool type conversions. So if you have, say, a metadata value called, I don't know, number, and it has a string like 1, 2, 3, 4 as the value for that dictionary key, if you call doc.int and then give it that key, it knows how to convert that string to a number to an int, and will do so for you behind the scenes. So it takes a lot of the thinking about types out of the picture when you're dealing with metadata, which is nice. Particularly when you're dealing with collections, because it knows how to convert between all kinds of different collection types. Okay, so we're going to do title, and let's do one more, description. Okay, so does everyone know what I'm doing here with the interpolated strings?
I am guessing so, since, well, a lot of the regulars on here are used to seeing them at least.
Okay, yeah, so basically what it's doing, it's essentially like calling string format. It's just a terser syntax for that. So I'd like to see a website being set up from scratch with pipelines. You're in luck. In the YM repository, there is a folder called examples, which has about 15 different examples of various use cases, none of which use recipes. They all just do pipelines and modules. So there's a lot to explore there, including some very simple like blog sites that would get you up and running with something like a blog with nothing but pipelines and modules. That examples folder is great to start with if you want a quick start on writing your own config file and don't want to use a recipe.
Okay, so now that we have content, that's the like documents that you use to actually render out files then, right?
Right, so what this is doing, we're taking the metadata. So this module read the RSS feed and set metadata. This module took that metadata and stuffed it as an interpolated string into the content of each document. So now I have a series of documents, one per syndication element type item, one per RSS item, and each of those has both the metadata for that RSS item, the title, link, publish, and description, and has a content equal to this string. And so now all I'm going to do is just write these out. We need somewhere to stick these, though. So let's add one more bit of metadata. We'll call this sequence. I don't know. Let's call this file name. And then let's do outputs. Count. I can never remember, is it count or length for a list?
For a list, it's count. Right?
Yeah.
Yep.
I always get those two mixed up. They should really, I get why they're different, but it is so confusing.
Yeah.
One of those dev confessions.
Yes.
Okay, so we're just going to get the count of items. That'll give us a sequence number, and we can use that as a file name. So then in our write files module, we have to tell it where to write these out. Now, if we had originally read in files, instead of sort of creating our own documents from reading the RSS feed, if we instead had had a read files module here, like something like this, read files, one of the things the read files module does is set special metadata that the write files knows how to read. So what you would end up with is files being written out at the same path as they were originally from.
Yeah.
Which is very handy. But since we're creating these from scratch, we need to tell it where to put the resulting HTML files.
That makes sense, yep. Because normally you'd match probably the same structure you had in your input, and in this, it didn't come from input, so.
Exactly, yeah. So we're gonna tell it where to put it. Same Lambda signature as before. For each document, we're gonna tell it where to put this. So this just takes a path. So let's just write these directly to, we'll make them HTML, even though this isn't really HTML. But you can imagine if you were doing HTML here, you could make this an HTML string. What you would typically do, we're not going to do today because we're both running pretty short on time here. But what you would typically do is read in like a Razor template. And then instead of having a content here, you would render that Razor template, which would read the metadata and result in an actual
essentially
HTML
binding the values in there like we normally would do when rendering a Razor view. Yep.
Exactly. Yeah. And because it's Razor, it knows how to look for layouts. So those pages would also follow the layout for the rest of your site.
Yep.
So this would be a good way to say spit out, individual feed pages for each of your.
So I now have my future to do. Sounds good.
Yep. So this is going to be easy. We'll do doc.string. What did we call this? Do we call it sequence file name? So we'll get the file name and then .html. So this will just give us 1.html, 2.html, and so on. And that should do it until we run this and get screamed at. So yeah, this was a lot of code to write without any feedback. So we'll see how this goes.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and run this then. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, so typically I end up going through a few cycles of...
trying to run it and see what error we get. There's our first one.
So we got that is a lot of stuff there. And I can't, it's hard to make that out on this.
Yeah, sorry, and they put red on blue, so it doesn't make it much easier.
They put red on blue.
Hey, yeah, Microsoft did that to us. That's default out of PowerShell, isn't it? Or was that you?
That's me.
Oh, well. Some jerk on the internet put in thing. I can't believe anyone would do that. What I meant to say was, I can't believe these guys use blue as their background color.
So what do we got? Can we maybe paste that first?
Looks like it says...
Paste that into a window so I can see it.
Yeah, here.
Let's paste that into a window in VS Code.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Oh, okay. Yeah, now I can see it much better. So
yeah.
I wonder if it'll open. It doesn't actually open for me. I think you have to save it for me to see it, but I can see it here now.
There you go. Saved.
Namespace cannot directly contain members such as fields and methods. Did I not?
Oh, we probably just have some simple syntax error somewhere.
Yeah.
Like.
You should give me line 745. Well, that is not even a line that's in our config file.
Nope.
Okay, where did those errors go? Did you save them? Oh, here we go.
Yeah, they're on the bottom.
Oh, right. Okay, so here's our first problem. I can't return that. I need to return a task.
Oh, yes, you need a task of that. Why is this async anyway? Do we need it to be async?
It doesn't necessarily need to be. All of these various usings here.
Oh, it's because
async.
you awaited some stuff. Yeah,
yeah,
okay.
So the method's got to be async to bring that in as async. So this should be returning. Well, why can't I return outputs?
Quick answer to your question. Next stream, we're going to be doing some coding, probably on our. I haven't decided whether it's going to be the bot or the rock paper scissors competition. It'll be one of those two, and that'll be on Monday.
That's why can't even find task.
Oh, because we need.
Yeah, we need
a using. I don't remember which using that is.
I don't either. Which namespace is that in?
Whoops.
It's not
task.
Is it
system threading? IO? System threading.
System threading. Okay.
Yep. Go ahead and add that in. Then we should be much better off.
Okay. Let's try that. Oh, it's system threading tasks.
Oh, okay.
There we go. Right, we'll just leave both of them.
Let's hope that those actually commented out when I did that.
Yeah, so I am slightly redeemed. The YM error messages look really, really good when it's blue on black. PowerShell, I guess, decided that blue was
that's what I said. They chose blue.
Yeah.
Okay. We need to get our stream stuff using statements in here. It looks like.
Do I not have that either? Okay, so we probably need system IO for that.
Yep, that sounds about right.
Okay. Let's give it another go. Oh, and probably system XML because we're using XML reader.
Yep. All right. Now I'll try it.
Okay. Maybe that'll get it.
All right. So the new ones are cannot be. Member name cannot be the same as their enclosing type.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
So we need to change the class name then, right?
Call that get feed data worker. Okay, let's try it again. Yeah, and so for anyone who was following that issue I mentioned in the YM repository about changing how this works so that we're not using script files and instead we're actually writing CS in a project, this is one of the reasons why, because this is painful to go through this iterative, get the error output, see what it says, figure it out cycle. Non-invocatable member execute cannot be used like a method. Well, that is weird.
Yeah, I don't know what that one is, but we can get some of these other ones.
So I know what that is. I don't know why it's complaining about it, though.
What is the namespace? System.xml? Didn't we include that?
Yeah, you might have run it a little too early.
Okay. Let me try to build.
What line was it giving me that? 23.
Yeah, you're right. That one's gone. No, actually, XML Stream Reader could not be found.
Is it not system.xml? Do I have system.net?
Wait, XML Stream Reader, that's not the name of it. It's XML Reader.
Oh, did I type XML Stream Reader? Where did I do that?
Yeah, that's...
Oh, over here. Yeah. Okay.
There we go. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, it was totally legitimate when it yelled at us about that. It was telling the truth there. Okay, so now it's got those non-invocable member.
Yeah, so I don't know why it's complaining about these, other than maybe because we're using a recipe. So what I'm going to do is just new these up. So one of the things, remember I mentioned that YM had some special sauce for the config file. One of the things the config file does is look for every module and basically create a static getter that knows how to instantiate that module. And then you can use that instead of the creating a module instance. But really, when we do a pipeline, what we're really doing is adding an instance of the execute class, which implements the iModule interface. So I'll just new these up directly. We'll see if that solves it.
I wonder if that's actually going to make it any better. Oh, hey, yeah, that was way better.
Okay, so how are we doing?
You can read that now? Look good?
Okay, still having compilation errors. What's our next one here?
Yeah.
See if we can knock these out in the next 5 minutes. Otherwise, maybe this is it to be continued.
Yeah. We may end up with a to be continued. So we have get feed data worker, not all code paths return a value is our big one right now. I'm not... Is that true? Oh, our return's outside of the curly brace. Move it up one curly. It's not in there.
Is it not? Well, it's okay. This is just inside a using expression.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, that's just the using.
I don't see any code path that doesn't return anything.
It says that's the error. I promise you, that's the error. It's right here.
Ah, okay. Get feed data worker, not all code paths return a value. You know what? I'm guessing there's probably an errant curly in here somewhere. Oh yeah. Oh no, that's right. Where does that one match up? That matches. That matches. That matches. That matches. Okay. Well, you know what? This is a good stopping point.
Yeah.
We will schedule a follow-up.
Sounds good. If I don't just fix it before I get you back on here, but if I do get you back on here, we'll just do something else.
Yeah, no, that's not bad. You can take a shot at this and see how far you get.
Yeah. So this will be out on my DevChatter GitHub also. So.
So hopefully everyone watching understands what was going on here. Basically, we created a custom pipeline, and that custom pipeline runs some janky code that reads an RSS feed, creates YM documents for each item in the RSS feed, populates those documents with metadata that we pull from the RSS item, and then uses that YM document in follow-on modules to set content for the document, and then write those out to a series of HTML files called 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is a to be continued.
Yeah, no, I think it's awesome.
But hopefully it gives you a taste for what you can do when you start customizing this. And because we're writing this custom stuff within a YM config that is already using a recipe, this lets us greatly expand the capabilities available to that recipe, because now you can envision doing things like using this pipeline to get the feed data. Normally, I wouldn't even be writing these out as their own files. What I would probably do with this pipeline is just stop at the execute and then use this pipeline and the documents that it produces inside of other pipelines and pages, like the home page, to put like a sidebar with a list of recent videos. And that sidebar would be written inside the Razor template, pull the data from this pipeline, and then use that to display the sidebar with each of the RSS items or something.
Yes, because likely what we'll want to do is then have some kind of a page where maybe it lists like the most recent 5 and then has a view all, and then you go to another page where it's like a list of all the videos and you can click on one to link to them or something.
Exactly right, yeah. And
Yep.
if you wanted to do custom pages for each video on your site, that would probably be where this comes in.
Yep.
You'd probably do something similar to this, except instead of content, you'd run it through Razor, a Razor template. And that would be one per feed item, and then you'd write it out to a special folder or something.
Yep.
And then you would also, after you've done that, you would still continue to use these on your homepage, because writing it out, something a lot of people mistake is that writing out the item does not somehow make it not usable by other stuff. It's just another module. So when you end with a writing it out, the write files module also outputs all of the documents that went into it. So at the end of this pipeline, we still have a document per feed item that we can use in other pipelines and other Razor pages just to get at the metadata.
Yep. Makes total sense. Makes total sense. Okay, cool. Well then, I guess we will probably wrap up here then.
Yep, one quick follow-up. At what point is the pipeline being run? Okay, so that's customizable. When you just do a pipelines add, the pipeline is run at the end of any recipe pipelines. There's a number of pipelines extensions like pipelines.insert, pipelines.remove, that let you manipulate that collection after the recipe has had a chance to do its thing. So you can remove recipe pipelines, you can put your own pipeline in at the front, you can put it before a particular pipeline from the recipe. You can tweak the order of pipelines all you want.
So because we had the collection, we might decide to say something along the lines of, after, something else, but we might want this to be early enough that our index one, for example, could get our list of videos.
That's exactly right. Yeah,
Yep.
If you wanted to do this, if you wanted to use this data on a sidebar in the index page, this pipeline would need to be before the index pipeline.
Yep, so we would have to insert it somewhere towards the beginning. And since this has no dependence on any other data, it would make sense to make this one of the first ones.
Yeah, you might as well just put it at the front. Exactly.
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
Yep.
Cool. I like that. So it's just then a collection, you just modify it. Yep,
yeah,
makes total sense.
The thing the config file is doing is basically setting up the collection. The pipe after the config file is run. So this is code that gets run at sort of startup. There's a step on the console that says evaluating config. That's when this code is run, and all this code does is basically add these modules and pipelines to the pipelines collection. Then after this code is completely done, the YM engine goes through and iterates over the pipelines collection, running each of those with their modules in sequence. So the actual execution of the pipelines and when we call these modules happens after the code in your config file is evaluated.
Yep, makes sense. Cool. All right, well, I guess I'm going to start wrapping things up here. So I wanted to say thank you to Dave for showing us YM. I think I can speak for everybody in saying it was pretty awesome. So very, very cool, very customizable. And we will have to continue this and get it running and see what we can actually build as our full site. So I think there's a lot of awesome stuff.
Yeah, we can do some cool stuff now.
Yeah. So thank you, Dave. I will go ahead and disconnect you now before I do the rest of my wrap-up here. So say bye to everybody and whatever other fun stuff you want to say.
Yep. Bye, people. Have fun. Hook me up. If you want to try YM and you start having trouble, hit me up on the YM Getter or on Twitter. I'm very active on both. There's links to both on the YM site. That's probably the best place to get help if you need it. Also, open issues in GitHub. I'm not one of these sticklers for GitHub issues have to be bugs. I use it kind of like a YM Stack Overflow. So if you have questions, feel free to open an issue on the repository as well.
Okay, awesome. Sounds good. Thank you, Dave, and take care. See you.
Yep. See ya.
Oh. Good. Dave switched to chat. All right, so at the end of this stuff here, I do want to mention a couple of things because I want to talk about what's coming up. So this was today. This was June 2nd. We were looking at YM with Dave Glick, and hopefully you all enjoyed that. We're going to have a pretty normal week this week as far as the stream's concerned. We're going to have a pair programmer with us on Tuesday. That's going to be Maxime, and I've been talking about that one. He's going to show us some cool things that we can do in Azure, and I am looking forward to seeing what he shows us then. Monday is going to be a standard programming one, and we're just going to do some C# code on the stream. It'll probably either be our rock, paper, scissors application, or it will be our competition application that we do. Or I should say our rock, paper, scissors application, or it's going to be our bot. For anybody that maybe noticed, assuming, yep, I thought that thing crashed because I hadn't been paying attention to it, our bot that is actually in the channel talking with you guys, that you probably saw say some things every once in a while, it's right there. That is actually built on stream, and in fact, all of the code that we do here on stream ends up on our GitHub account. That's github.com/devchatter. So if you're interested in taking a look at any of that, you can go there to check it out, report issues, contribute, just see the code, whatever you want to do. It's all out there. The other thing I want to mention is that if you want to talk with any of us outside the stream, the best place to do that is actually to join our Discord. I just posted a link as an invite to our Discord in the chat there. And Discord is a chat communication client that is commonly used by gamers, but we use it also here because it's commonly used by Twitch streams. So if you're interested in chatting with any of us, go ahead and join the Discord, and that is a way to talk with any of the other DevChatter people here about whatever programming stuff you're interested in. And we have a reasonable amount of discussions on there about different coding topics. So if you want to chat with people, see who else is interested in, whatever kind of tech, what people are using to solve which problems, whatever it is you want to do, our chat is in there and fairly available. So for anybody who doesn't know, we actually stream here 4 times a week for, roughly speaking, about 2 hours each time. We stream on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. So this is our last one of the week. And we will be back on Monday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. So you can convert that how you like using the interwebs. A couple of things I want to mention. Let's see, we talked about that, and yeah, so I guess that's probably about it. So thank you everybody for stopping by, hanging out, chatting, and everything else. I want to thank Dave for showing up and talking to us about YM. We already did thank him, but thank him again. And everybody that followed and chatted, or just hung out and chat, and just watched. Either way, you're all pretty awesome, and happy coding, and we'll see you all on Monday. Take care.